Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating pedagogical blueprint that completely flips the script on how we assess student knowledge. I mean, get this. A teacher in Ukraine actually figured out a way to take 19th century French literature, teach it in a foreign language, and wrap the whole shebang inside the neon-lit aesthetics of a massive pop culture phenomenon. Let's see exactly how they pulled this off. Now, looking at this, you'll probably notice how it takes the instantly recognizable pop culture hook of Squid Game, but, and this is absolutely crucial, completely strips away all the violence. You see the circle, the triangle, the square, and boom, your brain immediately engages, right? A brilliant 9th grade teacher realized this intense visual hook could be totally repurposed. By ditching the destructive elements of the original show, what we're left with is this incredibly compelling, psychologically safe framework for a cognitive escape room.
So, here's our game plan for today. We'll start off with gamifying the modern classroom, then unpack the pedagogical framework, walk through the 5 rooms of complexity, and finally, look at real results and adaptability.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, gamifying the modern classroom, and how we actually solve student disengagement.
We've all seen the universal challenge of testing anxiety, right? Well, a 9th grade literature and English teacher in Venezia created an ingenious workaround. Traditional assessments often just fail to capture a student's interest, and honestly, they can induce a ton of stress. But this method, it completely replaces that stress with a humane, high-energy, 40-minute quest. No one gets eliminated here. Instead, students are driven entirely by curiosity and teamwork. It fosters what the creator calls ecological grading. Basically, that means the environment is psychologically safe, failure isn't punished, and students advance at their own pace. But make no mistake, the cognitive demand remains incredibly high. Moving right along to Section 2, the pedagogical framework, where CLIL meets the escape room.
Okay, so CLIL is the real powerhouse here. It stands for Content and Language Integrated Learning. What this actually means in practice is that these Ukrainian 9th graders aren't just sitting there analyzing Honoré de Balzac's literary realism, they are actively deciphering it using English communication. They're mastering 2 incredibly complex subjects at the exact same time. It's like a cognitive double whammy. The game mechanics literally force them to use the foreign language to succeed, which effectively tricks their brains into bypassing all those usual anxieties we see with reading in a foreign language.
And this comparison brilliantly illustrates exactly why the teacher made the shift. We're talking about moving away from stressful, isolated memorization and stepping into collaborative, problem-oriented active learning. That daunting language barrier just sort of disappears behind the fun of a game. Think about it. In a traditional setting, a student is sitting there all alone, staring at a blank piece of paper, sweating, trying to remember facts about Balzac. But in this gamified CLIL assessment, they are talking, they're debating, they are moving. The learning actually becomes alive.
So let's look at how this plays out in Section 3, 5 rooms of complexity. It's truly an escalating journey.
What is so fascinating to me here is the geometric escalation. If we step into the shoes of a student navigating this, each shape represents a strictly defined cognitive jump, all based on the taxonomy of educational goals. It starts with basic facts and builds all the way up to complex cross-curricular synthesis. Just like in the TV show where the shapes dictate the rules, well, here the shapes dictate the required level of thinking. The circle, that's straightforward recall. The triangle demands recognition and sorting out distractors. The square requires building logical bridges. The star pushes them into deep interpretation. And the umbrella? Oh, that's full-blown interdisciplinary synthesis.
When we look at this progression, the 5 to 6 person teams have to solve one room just to unlock the code for the next. And get this, during this entire 40-minute process, the teacher steps totally back from being a lecturer and acts solely as a facilitator. If a team gets stuck, the teacher doesn't just hand over the answer. No way. Instead, they provide scaffolding. They ask open-ended questions and gently guide the students back to the text so they can figure it out themselves.
Let's zoom in on the specific tasks. In the first 2 rooms, the circle and the triangle, students are hunting for facts about novels like Gobseck and Father Goriot. In room 1, they've got to spot true statements about literary realism, add up the numbers of the correct statements, and boom, that sum becomes their passcode to the next room. Then, in room 2, they're solving rebus puzzles to identify characters, but they have to be super careful to filter out fake characters that just don't belong in Balzac's universe. It is fast-paced, fact-checking fun.
Now, as the pressure mounts in room 3, the square, they have to prove they really understand the deep psychological motives of Balzac's characters to unlock that next door. They're tasked with matching characters to their specific moral traits and social statuses. And this is exactly where rote memorization stops working entirely.
They literally have to understand the cause and effect relationships within the literature to find the right combinations to escape.
Moving into Room 4, the star. This is the pivot point where CLIL fully kicks in. Students receive this chaotic sentence with scattered letters hidden all throughout it. They have to extract these letters, unscramble them to find a core literary theme, something heavy, like alienation, sacrifice, or corruption. And then, they have to translate that highly conceptual word into English to get the final passcode. So they aren't just analyzing themes anymore, they are actively decoding them across languages.
Finally, they make it to the umbrella room, the ultimate test. Here, they decipher a numerical code to reveal an English riddle just like the one you see here. Listen carefully to this. Soulless, yet they guide the way. Wingless, yet they roam the earth. Some despise them, some still sway. For them, there's friendship, feud, or mirth.
So I want you to think about Balzac's 19th century world of status and ambition for a second. Based on everything these students have just reviewed about his realist literature, can you guess what invisible force drives all of his characters? Seriously, what do you think the answer to this final, ultimate riddle is?
The ultimate answer to unlock the entire game is money. This is just so brilliant because it perfectly synthesizes their literary analysis of Balzac's central critique of 19th century society right along with their English reading and comprehension skills. Solving this final room signifies total victory and honestly a complete mastery of the lesson's objectives.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, Real Results and Adaptability.
Now, theory is great and all, but what actually happened when this was deployed in a real 9th grade classroom? Well, the data proved that the familiar media context completely dissolved the psychological barrier of reading foreign languages. Because the students were just so engrossed in the game, they literally forgot to be anxious about the English text. Plus, that 40-minute time limit forced excellent group dynamics, with teams seamlessly managing their time and collaborating. And that ecological grading we mentioned, it meant that even the slower teams didn't feel like failures. They simply progressed as far as they could, maintaining their cognitive interest the entire time.
In fact, this framework is so incredibly adaptable that the author has already successfully rolled out 9 similar interactive quest games across entirely different subjects. Because the core structure, those escalating rooms of complexity, is invariant, you can plug pretty much anything into it. It's already been successfully used to teach 10th grade geography and even an 11th grade business basics course. And that brings us to the end of our breakdown today. It leaves us with a really inspiring thought. If a teacher can look at a high-intensity TV show about survival and transform its iconography into a stress-free, highly engaging tool for analyzing 19th century French literature, well, if we can turn passive learning into an unforgettable adventure, what will you build for your students tomorrow? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep looking for those brilliant connections.